On today's Technobabble, is good video worth the trouble?
This is Tech No Babble, your weekly source for church video and graphics news, perspectives, tips, and tricks. And now here's your host, Paul Clifford.
Hi everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Technobabble. My name is Paul Allen Clifford, and I'll be your host today. I would love it if you would join the conversation, so head on over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact. There you can ask your questions, leave comments, etc., and together we can make the show better. If you're more of an email person, no problem. Paul at trinitydigitalmedia.com will reach me directly. No assistant reads those emails or anything like that. That's me, right here. This is the guy that does it. And you can ask your questions or whatever using that. If you're more of a phone person, 1-877-763-3246, 1-877-POD-ECHO, where you can echo back to this podcast. Also, I am on Twitter. You might notice my Twitter handle under my face, Paul Allen Cliff, PAULALANCLIF, is a great way for you to reach me as well. Speaking of this being a podcast, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, you can get this video or the audio, whichever you would prefer, every single week when it's released automatically for free. That's right, free. Just head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/subscribe and you'll find all the links there. I'm still in the midst of submitting the video links to iTunes and all. So there are a few that aren't there yet, but they will be there very soon. So trinitydigitalmedia.com/subscribe. If you've already subscribed and you like the show, help me out. 4 or 5-star review, whatever, as long as it's honest, on iTunes is a very big help to me. So I have all the iTunes links listed at trinitydigitalmedia.com/iTunes reviews. And I have I've got the screencast show up there right now that you can subscribe to. That was just approved yesterday. And there are a lot of different shows that you can subscribe to. You might not know I do 5 shows a week except for the screencast show, which doesn't make any sense as audio. I do all of them in both audio and video, so if you'd rather watch them on a Roku, for example, trinitydigitalmedia.com/Roku, you can do that. If you'd rather watch them on your phone when you get some time, or on your iPad, or what have you, you can do that as well. If you'd rather listen, say when you're in your car, when you're exercising, whatever, that's what I do. I only listen to podcasts by and large. So I listen when I'm working, I listen in the car, I listen when I'm jogging, I listen when I'm lifting weights. Whatever I'm doing, I find that a great occasion to listen to podcasts. So let's talk about today's topic. You might think, well, I don't know. You talked about lighting and said that was worth the trouble. You talked about sound and said that was worth the trouble. Is good video really worth the trouble? Well, you might be not surprised to know that I have proof that it's worth the trouble. Let me show you what bad video can look like. Here we are. This is bad video. You might be thinking, oh, wow, that is bad. How'd that happen? Well, first off, I'm using the built-in iSight on my MacBook Pro instead of the regular camera, which is a Logitech C615 external camera. So first off, the placement is a little odd. So let's do a little work and let's see if we can't make this shot a little bit better. I'm going to tilt down the screen just a bit. Okay, that's a little bit better. Oh, I see the light in the background. That's really not all that helpful. So let's reposition me. Oh, that's a little bit better. It's still a little orange. So what I'm using is a piece of software called Webcam Settings. Here, let me tweak this. Okay, so I'm going to change the white balance. So let's go. Oh, that's a little bit better. And let's see what else we can do. It's still a little dark. So what if I make it a little brighter? So there we go. That's not horrid. Let's see what, oh, that's even better. So that was a little bit of work. Not a lot. Actually, the saturation. Maybe I should pull down the saturation just a bit. There we go. So that was some extra work. I didn't just set the camera and forget it. What you saw earlier was the basic setting. In fact, that looks good enough. I think I'm going to save that. Save a new profile. Let's call this iSight for Video Podcast. I'm going to save that, and now I can switch between that and this. Actually, let's go back to this. That shows a little bit more of what's going on here. And white balance. Let's actually take that back down a little bit. Okay. So the question is, what I was doing before where it looked like this, wasn't that worth the trouble? I mean, it really didn't take me all that long. And granted, this isn't perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. And I did that with the built-in web camera on my computer. Now this isn't an HD web camera. This is standard def, and it could be better, but it's a lot better than it was. So I think that taking some time to do some tweaks is actually worth the trouble. So by shifting my position, by tweaking the tilt of the camera, by tweaking the white balance and some of the other settings in the camera, I went from really gross video to much better video. So I think that that is something that's kind of proves that it actually is worth the trouble to deal with this. So let's go back to the other camera, shall we? Okay, so here we're back at the regular camera, and you'll notice that while the other one wasn't bad, this is better. So sometimes you actually need a better camera to get better results. So let's talk about things to look for when you're trying to decide if you need a better camera right after this. Technobabble and all the churchtechcast.com shows are generously provided for by viewers like you. Thank you. head on over to patreon.com/Paul Allen Cliff. That's patreon.com/PaulAllenClif, and you can support the show for as little as $1 a month. Every little bit helps, so thank you. So, if you do realize that you've reached the limits of what you can do with your camera, what are some questions that you should ask yourself? How can you know if it's time to move on to something better? Because keep in mind that what I just did was with very inexpensive equipment, and the video was much better than the default that I had just a moment prior. So what should you be thinking? Well, remember, it's absolutely the case that the quality will, to a certain extent, follow the person who's responsible for making it happen as opposed to the equipment. So what I mean by that is, if you give a novice very expensive equipment and you give a professional very cheap equipment, you can get much better results from a professional than you can from a novice. The problem is the person. The problem isn't necessarily the equipment. But you give that professional the professional equipment, magic. Just beautiful things can happen. Now, with that said, I don't want churches to cop out. Before, as I was getting ready, I was watching some of the past episodes, which, if you go to churchtechcast.com anytime, I've got a loop of all this year's shows. Well, the vast majority of this year's shows playing constantly. So you can check out previous shows. And one of them that was playing, I was recommending that churches that don't have paid staff should have better equipment than those that do. Now, I don't want you to waste the time of your paid staff. Don't hear that. But if you're not paying a person to do the work, they are actually spending their time. And time is life, by the way. They're spending some of their life to do work for the church. And if they are, should you really hold back $100 if that gives them more life to spend with their family? Should you really hold back $500 or $1,000? Let's say you spend $2,000 a year. A year. Let's divide $2,000 by 50 weeks. So that's actually 2,000 divided by 50. That's 205 weeks. Is $40 a week. Would you spend $40 a week to let your volunteers have more time with their families? That's really all a $2,000 piece of equipment costs you in 1 year. But if you use that piece of equipment for 2 years, that's $20 a week. Isn't that worth it? To give someone back some time, to help them develop skills that maybe they can use professionally, and maybe in that way they can help their family by making a little more money? Think about it. So, whether you're a novice, an amateur, maybe a hobbyist, or whether you're a professional, there are limits of what you can do based on the equipment. And once you reach those limits, you might need to upgrade. So here are some things that I've been thinking about, are some questions that you should ask. should the camera that you get be standard definition, high definition, either 720p or 1080p, or should it be 4K? Well, in 2014, the answer, should it be standard definition? Almost universally, the answer should be no. That would be like asking in 2000, should a video camera be black and white? Pretty much no. Now, if you have no choice, you have no choice. But if you're spending money on something and if you can buy it, you should start with HD. Why? Because you're not buying for today. You're buying for however long you think this piece of equipment is going to last. Let's say that you think that it's going to last 5 or 6 years. In 2020, do you think that you would have a standard definition camera that you would have in wide use? I don't think so. In fact, I think that in 2020 you would probably have a high definition camera that would be in wide use. And probably even more likely, 4K cameras are just going to be the norm. We're starting to see them in camera phones, smartphones, etc. We're starting to see DSLRs move that way. Yeah, I think that we're all going to be taking 4K videos anytime now. And so if you're buying HD, you need to think, is this going to last as long as I want it to? Because SD is already passe. Already. Next, you need to ask how you'll use it. Because if you're buying a DSLR to record the entire service, with few exceptions, you have just bought the wrong type of equipment. Because most DSLRs can record about 12 minutes. So that's a mistake. Next, you need to, and if you're recording for long events, you need a camcorder. If you're recording pre-produced clips, maybe a DSLR is better. Maybe you can buy multiple cameras. Maybe you can buy a studio camera, a DSLR, an ENG camera. Maybe you can buy those, but maybe you can't. Maybe you can only buy one camera. So the question is, what's the most flexible camera that I can get? And that's probably a better camera for you to go for than for a camera that is less flexible. Next, what budget do you have? Now I want you to answer the question of what do I need before you answer the question of what budget do I have, so that you can say, oh, I actually need to spend more than our budget, or we're not going to get everything that we have, everything that we need to do. Now, when you know that and you compare the available models, what budget you have, and what you need, when you compare those three, you can say, okay, what is something that we can do without? Can we bump up the budget so we can do without the lower cost? Can we get rid of one of the things that we need the camera to do? So we can get rid of features, we can get rid of some flexibility. Can we maybe buy something used and that way get more flexibility and a less expensive price and have more flexibility? So those things, you just need to ask those questions. If you have a budget of almost nothing, you are not going to get a professional ENG camera, a studio camera, something like that. You might have to do with what you can do with. Maybe it is a web camera. But you're not going to have the ability to do a lot of things that you might want, like a zoom. It's just not possible because you just don't have the money for it. So maybe there's something that can be changed, tweaked, added to, and you can go from there. So if you have a budget of almost nothing, you don't have a lot of options. If you have a budget of $500 to $1,000, take a look at DSLRs as long as you don't want to record the entire service. If you want to record clips, a DSLR is a pretty good thing to do. If you want to have pre-recorded pieces, a DSLR is pretty good. If you want to record the entire service, then an ENG camera is a better way to go, like a camcorder, but a more professional one. If you want to do IMAG, image magnification, then a studio camera is probably a better way to go. Finally, consider what type of camera you have the ability and budget for. Do you have only the budget and ability for a consumer camera? It's going to be a lot less expensive, but it'll lack a lot of the power features. Maybe you have a little more money and you know a little bit more about using video cameras. Then maybe in that case you can use a prosumer camera. Perhaps, though, you can use a professional camera. And if you can use a professional camera and you have the budget for it, you're probably going to have all kinds of flexibility. So I want you to consider that as you're considering expanding the different types of cameras that you can perhaps add to your arsenal. Because like a lot of tools, they have different purposes and they do different things. But if you choose well, they can help you go out and change eternity. Until next time, don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or subscribe in one of the other ways. Don't forget to share this with a friend and leave reviews in iTunes. Remember, trinitydigitalmedia.com/subscribe to subscribe. trinitydigitalmedia.com/iTunes reviews to leave a review. And whatever you do, go out and change eternity. Till next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford with trinitydigitalmedia.com.